Okay, today on the Captain Cast Laboratory, I'm going to be working on an oil lamp, or an oil heater lamp, or an aroma lamp. I've heard them called so many things. Anyhow, this one has a high wattage light bulb. This glass tube is over with a glass plate you fill with oil, and that's why it's got a groove here and a flat spot here and a notch in the top here to lay that big plate of super hot aroma oil. Anyhow, the glass pieces are all gone, so let's figure out something else to do with this lamp. So I've looked at it for a while and figured make a bubbling cauldron of like brimstone or something in the center, because this light without that protective coating is ungodly bright, or that protective glass tube, because the glass tube was red, so it made it look like fire, and it's a really bright light. Anyhow, the bottom was already starting to peel, so I peeled the rest off. It had that sticky felt, or one side's felt, the other side's a sticky adhesive. You can get it at Michael's and stuff. And first thing I'm going to do is remove the lamp pieces. There's a nut on the bottom. I already broke it free because they're not usually finger tight. Let's get that washer out. Come on. There's the washer. And now let's get out the protective disc. Generally these are paper. This one's plastic, or paper cardboard material. It's a plastic housing, not just a plastic disc. Yep, there we go. And we have two small wire nuts. Since it's a two-pronged socket, there's no ground. And apparently it's gotten hot. It's been used a lot since the wire nuts are coming apart. Just cracked. So instead of unscrewing them like you're supposed to, I'm just going to snip them, because I'm not going to be reusing the wire nuts. And if I reuse the wire, I'm going to trim it back to fresh wire anyhow, because I can't always trust the wire that's stripped as far as whether the braiding is good or not. So there's the pieces of the wire nut falling out. And let's get this piece out, like so. So here is the light holder with the notch for the cable, the wire. You have another, if you do something like this, you can always save this for another project, or if you have a lamp that uses a specific socket, you have a spare. This cord is definitely reusable. It's an on-off with a potentiometer or dimmer. It makes the light bulb brighter or dimmer, which means the heat hotter or colder. So this is a good cord. It can be used for a lamp. If you make it LED, it has to be one that's dimmable. If you make it incandescent, doesn't matter. Throw away the broken wire nuts. So we'll set that off to the side too. So what I did by looking at this disc, this indentation right here, is I found a tea light that's in a plastic housing to make it look like those old school glass ones. It's held in with a couple of screws on the bottom around the edges. I already removed the screws so I can take this out, because I just want this plastic housing. Well, I unscrewed the screws. I haven't actually removed them from the plastic housing yet. So let's do that real fast. That's 2 and 3. Because this plastic housing has a hole in the bottom, so you can access the battery and off-on switch. And it pretty much fits inside that notch. So it can be glued in, or you can drill a couple of small pilot holes, a couple of mils smaller than the screws that came out of this, and just run the screws in from the top going down into this resin base. You would definitely want to drill a small pilot hole because you don't want to crack the resin. Most likely you won't split the resin where it falls into pieces, but you'll chip chunks out of it where you're trying to put the screws in. So hot glue, super glue, whatever you do, you want to clean this. It's not, at least on this one, it's not, it doesn't feel the same as this, probably because of oil. So, or the aromatherapy fluids. But anyhow, so that doesn't look too terribly horrible, sitting in there like a dragon leaning over a cauldron or a brimstone, because that's what I'm going for. But this is an opaque white, and this is tones of gray, black, silver. So what I'm going to do is, because I do want it to reflect on the inside and shine some of the light, the LEDs that I'm going to put in here, I want the side facing out to be darker. So what I was thinking about doing is, if I set this in here so I have a reference point, I'm going to make the notch on the resin base match the notch on this. So I have a reference point for, I'm probably going to mask off from about here to here 90% or 180 degree portion of the circle, or 50% of the actual surface area. Leave that the opaque white, and then make the rest of it black. And the reason for that is the LEDs inside, not only would they make the brimstone look, or fire, or whatever you want to call it when we're done, glow, I want it to illuminate the base to give it a underglow. Very similar to what I did with the Grim Reaper clock statue, which that thing looks nice. I generally I'm very critical of my own work, always have been, and I do really like that one. It's been sitting on my shelf since I built it. The only time it ever gets turned off is when we lose power, and it's been working fine ever since. So this has a texture to it. It's not smooth. The inside's a lot smoother than the outside. What I'm going to do first is clean this off so that way tape sticks to it and paint sticks to it, and then we're going to mask it, and I'm going to go get some black spray paint and take this thing outside and spray paint it, because spray painting in the house, it's not always suggested. So this is isopropyl alcohol. It's just a big gallon jug of it. It's a very good, not only disinfectant, but it's a very good cleaner. And if you have any cuts in your hands, you'll find them real fast. So just clean down the outside. Remove anything, dust, grime. This has been sitting in a bucket of mine for God knows how long. I used to use it as a pumpkin light a long time ago. Then I quit using it for that. And then I'm going to clean the inside. Not because I'm planning on painting the inside, but just to get the dirt out. You can see it's kind of discoloring the towel. So let's get the isopropyl alcohol out of the way. And I got some rather wide blue painter's tape. Let's see if I have something slightly smaller. Actually, this might still work. Let's find out. So, notch. So I want it from about this point here. It doesn't have to be perfect. If you want it to be perfect, you can. I'm just trying to make it a little straighter. Again, going back to that, it doesn't have to be perfect, yet I'm trying to make it somewhat better. So there, and then match up my notch to about here. Right about there. I have some thinner painter's tape somewhere. I'm not going to spend an hour trying to find it. Masking tape, painter's tape. I've seen people do it with clear tape where they've masked off part of it to paint. Just gotta be careful because a lot of clear packing tape doesn't stick as well, especially when paint hits it. But if you're not going for something perfect, use what you got. Heck, if you have any of those double back shipping labels, I've done that before too. The shipping labels that you can stick on, I've used those as a masking template before when I couldn't find my tapes. Bottom isn't terribly important. The reason I'm doing the bottom is because there's screw holes and of course normal holes in the bottom. I don't want any overspray going up inside the holes, getting anything on the inside of this. I want to keep the inside as clean as possible to allow the most amount of light to show through. And you may ask how you're going to, cover the inside without paper towel. Cotton balls works really well for giving you a masking area to. You just have to shape it to fit. So, if you really fancy it, you can also use hot glue and coat the inside with hot glue around the edges, and then when you're done painting, peel it off. It does work. You can also do it with what's it called? Oh, rubber contact cement. It also does it with that too. Let it in, let it dry, paint your object, and then roll it off with your thumb. So you can use a lot of things to mask a surface if you don't have tape, or it's a circle or a disc or a dome or what have you. So, all right, so this is pretty much prepped. I'm going to go outside and hit this with some black paint, let it harden. We're going to come back in, see how this turned out, and then we're going to make the part that goes inside. First we'll probably do the brimstone, then we'll work on the light, and then the light fixture that comes out, the cord that comes out the back, which we're just going to feed it through the original hole. So, all right, we'll be back shortly. All right, painting is done, and I did a little test and found even with the black paint, light still shines through. So I'm going to make it relatively bright to overpower the cotton balls. Cotton balls are going to be my brimstone. So I did line the inside with some electrical tape. So the outsides, I use gloss black. It gives a little bit of a shine, as you can see. I left the other side open, so it reflects the light out. And then I just use electrical tape on the inside. I was just testing it with some random LEDs on a LED tester, such as this. So I just plugged the LED in, pressed the button, held this over, and I could see the LED through here. I'm like, well, that's no good, because I'm going to have more than one LED in here. So, while this was also done, I built a basic circuit. There is 5 LEDs on this. 2 yellow flicker, 2 orange flicker, and a bright red. They run at 2 volts. So, let's dim some of these lights. And it's going to overpower the camera because the bright red is actually a very bright red. As you can see, you probably can't even tell there's 4 other lights because the bright red is, well, bright. I'm going to put the cup over it and take these cotton balls, which will get painted or dyed. I'm debating on which one to do. I'm going to shove a few of them in here. There's literally 3 of them in here now. I'm going to rotate this so it quits reflecting onto the white circuitry. I'll try and lift it up. You can kind of see what I'm going for. Now you can see the black is black. So I get the reflection outwards, which you can see fades away. So I get the illumination of the dragon. And then this, which you can kind of tell with the cracks in the, well, it's not really cracks, it's where the cotton balls meet each other. You can see it's flickering. Kind of looks like brimstone. Hit this with some red and maybe some black so it looks sooty, and it should come out pretty well. Lights are coming back. 1 and 2. So we probably just used 3 cotton balls. I grabbed 4, but 3 fit in there pretty good. Here's a little bit closer view just to test it. So 2 yellow, 2 orange, and then I have a flat 4, or I forgot the type of LED it's called. You can see these stick up. See how they lift off the board. And then the one in the middle is very low profile. It's also got 4 pins, not 2. They're a higher intensity light. It can actually go a little bit higher than 2 volts. These all can run at 2.2. The red one can run at about 2.5, and it's overly bright at that point. It's hard to believe that just a half a volt can increase the intensity that much, but it does. So this is what I'm going to put in here. I want the red light to give it the red glow, and then I want the orange and yellow to add not only the flicker effect, but to add depth. If you ever look at a fire, there are multiple colors like I talked about a little bit ago. And then with the cotton balls, to make it dimmer or brighter, you increase the thickness of the cotton balls. So I can when I put this onto a wafer board or a PCB board and stick it towards the bottom, instead of just having them sitting at the top, I can shove some down inside, which will also diffuse more of the light. So that'll be the next thing, is taking this and cutting out, of course I put out of reach, some of this to fit inside here. And of course all you gotta do is just trace it on, take a marker, trace the bottom, and then cut it out slightly smaller so it slides in. One thing about this being tapered is, let's say I want this to sit up 1/4 inch. I can still do the tracing, but I can measure, or I can use a compass, the one that you put the pencil in and spin it. Say, okay, I want it this high, measure the outside diameter of this, take into account the thickness of the plastic, and then draw it on there so when it drops in, it stops at a certain height. Most likely what I'm going to do, because I'm not going to have it rest completely on the bottom. I want a little bit of height for the wires and the solder and the resistors. Because I'm going to have this run at 2 volts, but the power supply I'm going to feed it with is 4.5. The reason I'm going to feed it with 4.5 is I have tons of them. I have more 4.5 adapters than you can imagine, most of them being from the Lemax stuff. Mainly because they all come with 4.5 volt adapters, and I don't use the single ones very often. I always buy the multi-head or build my own multi-heads. So since I have dozens of these things, I'm going to use one for something other than Lemax. Now in the back of this, there was a plastic bushing that was just hot glued in. It prevented chafing of the 120 volt power cable. I took the bushing out, which is right here, and then I filed it out to where I could slide a power port on it. So I can take this plug end and plug it in. So that way, this can be unplugged and moved and not have a cord permanently attached to it. So now that it's filed out, all I have to do is hot glue it or super glue it back in, and then that holds it inside. So, of course, before you do any of that, you'll want to put wires on it and feed them through the inner hole right here, so you can do all your work in this cavity, and then put a sheet of felt back on, which I mentioned also. But since it's a different day than it was when I first started this, I did get that stuff I was talking about. This is felt, and then, what do they call it? Here we go. Adhesive foam sheet. So it's foam. It feels like felt, but it's got the big sticker. So I'll put that on there when we're done, trace it out, cut it out, stick a new bottom on, we're good to go. You can see who it's made by. It's Cretology. And I got this from Michael's. It was $1 for this 9 by 12 sheet. So, and those actually come really handy for the bottom of Lemax houses. So when you peel the foam off, and you have this exposed porcelain, if you don't want to glue it back on and you tore your foam up trying to get into one of these with all this flat surface area, of course the indentations won't have it. You can trace out your house, slap that bad boy on, and then just press it, and if there's too much hanging over, razor knife or pair of scissors, trim off the excess and you're good to go. So houses like this didn't have that. This one just had the solid bottom, but you get the point. So the next step is taking this, sticking it on one of those boards, which I'll set up for that now, and then doing the measurements on this to where I want to place it, getting the resistors out so I can run this at 4.5 volts and not pop them, because they can't run that high, they'll just burn out. And then we'll work on these cotton balls and determine, because of course, you know, it looks good at night, but once I shove them in here, I don't want to see white against a dark dragon statue. So probably going to end up putting them where I want, putting some glue on the bottom so it holds their position for the most part, and then either dyeing them or spray painting them. I'm thinking about just doing spray paint, or I might just dye them in some red paint, let them dry, and then touch them up with some spray paint, black spray paint, to add that soot or carbon appearance like you see in lava. When you see lava flow, it's orange and red, and the top of it turns black because it's drying, cooling down. So anyhow, I'm going to set up for the next part, which is taking this small basic little circuit, converting it to a board with some resistors so I can run it on a 4.5 volt power supply and not watch it instantly just go poof. So we'll be back. Alright, we're on the next part where we're going to make the circuit board to fit inside here. I want it to sit about halfway down, so there's a little gap at the bottom for the bottom of the components, those, and the wiring. So you need to measure the diameter of the outside is the easiest to start. Since I want to go about halfway, looking at about 1.70 inches. And we got to measure the thickness of the plastic, which is 0.05. And then we subtract that from the first number, which would give us 1.65. And if we divide that by 2, we get 0.825 inches. So I'm going to set my caliper for 0.825 inches, which would give me the radius of the circle. I'm going to tighten the pin, and then I'm going to use the caliper to make sure I can fit it. And I will. If I stick it in this hole here, I can then score a circle. And if you notice, I turned this PCB board upside down, and that's so I'm not trying to score it across the copper pads. I'm scoring it on the plastic. Slightly bigger than the base, because of course it's wider. It's smaller than the top, so of course it fits inside. But hopefully you can see the ring that I've scored into it. So I'm going to unlock my caliper, close it, put it back in its case so it doesn't get damaged, and put it away. Trimming these things, you can use a saw, you can use all sorts of things. I usually use snips. It's not as clean, but it does the job. If I can do it without breaking the whole thing would be great. We're going to find out. So what I'm doing is, because it's all dotted, it's like a perforated piece of paper. You trim on the dots, it'll usually follow them straight off and break big chunks off. So that is what I'm trying to do. That shot off. eye protection is recommended, or if you have your fingers over it, you can catch the pieces. And that's probably what I should be doing. A circle doesn't have to be perfect, but you can always use sandpaper to smooth the edges. I'm going to see how it fits once I get the basic circular shape out. There we go. Almost there. So, basic circular shape. It's a little higher than I'd like, but then I don't have all the circle part curved off, but now you can basically see how it works. So, get some of these jagged points off, it'll probably sit a little flatter. This is just 150 grit sandpaper I have here. I'm just going to try and get some more of the points off closer to my ring. And that's a lot better. Sits a little bit lower now. It's still a little higher than I want, so I'm going to keep sanding it, but it does sit better. I guess my measurement was off by a little bit. Probably should have gone maybe 0.82 versus 0.825. So let's sand this down some more. The joys of making custom stuff. It's always better to have it too big and make it smaller than have it too small, and no matter how many times you fix it, it's still too small. Because if you keep cutting it or sanding it, it doesn't get any bigger. Alright. Doesn't seem like much, but that little extra sanding got it to sit down a little bit lower, a more tolerable height. So, next step is to solder on the components, which are still on that wafer board. First thing I'm going to do is turn on my solder station, get it warmed up. Sorry, I set in the temperature. That's all that clicking sound. Because I had to get a new solder station. My old one was dying. This one I haven't soldered with, so we'll see what happens. I also have to tin this, so that's going to take me a few seconds here. Yeah, so since I started this project, I've had to replace my solder station. It's things like this that slow things down is when things break. Alright, so the copper padded side is where I want to have the components, so soldered, of course, and I'm going to have the non-copper side would be the face of the components. What I'm going to add a little flux into the area I'm going to be soldering. So I'm going to start with this big square LED. I'm going to try and get that guy right close to the center of the circle. Like so. I'm only going to put a little solder on 2 of the pins, diagonal from each other, just to hold it in place. That way it doesn't fall off. Now I'm going to surround it with the flicker LEDs. If I can hold on to them. Apparently the solder got into the hole I was trying to push the LED through. So let's get rid of that solder. There we go. That way the LED goes in. Like so. Now these LEDs are set so that you can stick them in just 2 holes side by side. I'm actually putting a hole in the center, so it's causing the legs to bend out. I'll show you that in just a moment. Do that for making it easier to solder. Also by stretching the legs out, it gives me a slightly higher setting so I can adjust the LED's angles once I finish soldering them to see how they look through that cotton. So before I put that last one in, you can see that they're splayed out. That acts as a spring tension to hold them in place. And then it prevents me from pushing them too far down. So again, I can adjust their angles once I put the cotton balls back on top. And again, I just soldered one of each leg. Just to hold them in place. Put the last one in, so. So, there's my 4 LEDs. They are different heights, because I want it to give different dimension of appearance when I do the cotton balls. I don't want it to be a very uniform flame. I want it to give that ununiform, so that way the different heights means different pins of light. It's all personal preference, so you can do it any way you'd like. Now I need to make sure that they're not touching each other, so I can verify the negative versus positive, make sure we get them all in the right order. Then we'll put the jumpers in, solder on the resistor, test it, make sure that this lights up like it's supposed to. Put it in here with some wires that go off to the base, which is over here, right there. And then we'll do the cotton balls. And probably get some yellow and red and try some orange. Give it some dimension, and then probably do some black touch-up on the top. So. More. Solder. Cooperate. There we go. Now I'm just soldering the other 2 pins that are on the other LED that has the 4 pin. That way they're soldered. Jump the negatives across to each other, like that. Solder those in place. So all the negatives are going to be soldered to each other, all the positives are going to be soldered to each other. So each one of these LEDs is going to be in parallel to each other. And I'll do the positives, then we'll add the resistor, we'll do some testing. Now on the bench power supply, this was drawing 0.02 milliamps. So this thing draws very little power. The person I'm making it for, or modifying it for, I guess you could say, since I didn't make the light or the lamp, I'm just making the light for it. They want it to also be able to be run on a 5-volt USB power supply. So they can plug it into their computer or a battery bank. So the 4.5 volt adapter I was going to use will still work. The resistor that's in here, I've actually taken it up higher than the 4.5 volts. I've actually taken it up about 9 just to make sure it doesn't burn the LEDs out. Mainly 1 for voltage spikes, and 2 just in case you plug the wrong adapter in. I've actually taken it all the way up to 12, but that's really pushing the limits of these LEDs with this small resistor. It's not something I'd recommend you do often. That would be bad. And the other reason I didn't cut these down when I stuck them in is because I was going to use the legs to connect them to each other to reduce the amount of wires I needed. I'm not really worried about how pretty it looks underneath because once it's in, you shouldn't ever take it out. And I'm probably going to put hot glue on it, fill in the base a little bit with hot glue to help hold it in. So you're not going to see it. If this was something that'd be visible, I'd make it a lot cleaner and neater and I wouldn't be folding the pins over as much. But this saves on space since I'm limited to the size of this disc. And let's see, the negative from this guy is right here. This is always the boring part, is watching somebody do fine work like this. It's not thrilling, it's not exciting. So, what I've done, and I'll try and show it as best as possible, where's those tweezers, is focus. There you go. This side here is the negative. These 4 pins sitting up are the positive, so I folded them over to connect all of them to one point, and I'm going to do the same here. I'm going to fold it down, down, and then fold the positives over here out of the way. The other thing with the hot glue is it'll help insulate the positive from the negative once I put it in to prevent any arcing or shorting together if for some reason they move. So I don't envision them moving, but I also know this person named Murphy and he likes to screw things up. So, and if you don't know what I'm talking about, I'm referring to Murphy's Law. The reason we haven't been posting as many videos at the moment is the Murphy has come to visit just before the Thanksgiving holiday and taken out the ceiling in our workshop. So, kind of dealing with a big hole. Which is why the videos have slowed down. It's because I've been dealing with trying to repair a big hole, and I do mean a big hole. 50% of the ceiling came crashing down due to thermal changes. And of course the insurance company says thermal changes do not get covered under insurance. So apparently if your ceiling falls because the temperature changes dramatically in the course of a couple of days and your ceiling can't take the transfer, you get screwed. So. And of course when it gets repaired, there'll be no videos either because we'll be working on replacing a ceiling. So, lots of fun. But anyway, I still have time in between work and everything else. We'll still be getting stuff done. So the time of year that my job is busy, and I don't work in, but always gets busy here in the winter time in Arizona because that's when people want to go outside. Definitely don't want to go outside in the summertime. It's way too hot. Alright, just trying to get this last pin cut. get it in my pile of garbage. Apparently my snips, there we go. Oh, the jaws are bent. Let's get another set. Brand new ones. Just arrived in the mail the other day. Alright, where did I put that resistor? Yeah, I'm going to put the resistor on the top of the board and just solder it through the bottom, just like the LEDs. Resistor is not going to take up much space on the top, and you're not going to see it through the cotton balls. Alright, now technically this should work. Technically. I'm not a fan of these new connectors that came with the new unit. I have it set for 4.5 volts. Actually, let me grab my old ones. I don't like these. One, two. Yeah, those are so much nicer. Put that backwards. Let's not do that again. Alright. So apparently, we missed a solder joint. Only got a couple of lights working, so let's take a closer look. Alright, all the negatives are good. Did miss one. Let's make sure I didn't miss anything else. Missed two. There we go. Alright, hopefully that's the problem. There we go. So, all the lights are working. Just apparently didn't see what I missed. happens. Even with magnification glasses, I missed one important solder joint. The other one wasn't, the first one I missed wasn't too terribly bad. It was, I only soldered one of the 2 pins on the center LED. I like to solder them both. But what I missed was the 2 connections. I had them where I bent the pins and I didn't solder to the pins. I had the pins like this and I soldered these and left a gap. And then I just connected the gap. So anyhow, that was a basic mistake. Soldering iron. So this is 4.5 volts. This is 5 volts. You really can't see much of a difference in the brightness or intensity. So this will run on USB, and it is drawing 0.02 milliamps. This thing will run for a really long time on a USB battery chart pack. Your computer, plug it in your computer. The computer's not even going to know there's a load on it. The problem is the load is so minuscule that some battery packs that require it to actually detect a load won't detect this, even with that resistor. But the person that wanted this done, they have basic battery packs that don't have the load detection. Also, they'll probably just use a wall socket USB cell phone charger. So, and as far as the base goes, here's the base. I talked about it, I did resin in a port. Since the resin has to sit for a day, the power port's resined in, I had to put the wire on it in advance, because once you resin it in, you're never going to get the wire out or on. So I have the wire already set that'll fish through the center of that. So, to solder it in onto the board. And then I can push this back down. Now, what I was going to do is try and drill those holes. The problem I have is all my micro drills, whether they're mechanical like this one or electrical like the other ones I've used in the past, don't go below 1.5 millimeter chucks. Collets. And the hole I need to drill is 0.5. I believe. Let's see what this one is. Actually, that one might work. Anybody out there that doesn't do a lot of custom stuff, this is the process. Once you do it a couple of times, it's really fast. But anytime you build a one-off, it's always slow. I already took the drill bit out and it fell off. That's the size drill bit I'm going to use, which is really small. I mean, it's real small. It is it's actually a 0.45. It's an itty bitty little guy. And that collet does work. Look at that. I could probably get that collet to fit on my electric drill, the one I showed you in the past, but I'm afraid that the speed might cause it to break said drill bit. So, how this one works, it's a twist drill. Yeah. You do that and it spins. But what I'm going to do at first is I'm just going to mark the holes by twisting the entire drill just to chip up the resin. Maybe not. I found a hollow spot in the resin. Maybe I won't be screwing this thing down like I wanted. I'm going to try. And I'll show you what I mean. If you look right about where my finger is, you'll see there's a lot of white. There's actually an air bubble in the resin. As soon as I started pushing that in there, it popped. And I don't have super long screws. That's intentional. They're not really there to be for strength. They're there to just hold it in place. So I might actually just have to well, glue it in like I was thinking the first time. This is where a magnet would come in handy. And I have one. Alright. Alright, well, it looks like it's going to be glued in because all I'm doing is chipping the resin. So, I'm going to use, to make it more rigid, some Gorilla Clear Glue. This stuff takes a long time to set. That is the only downfall to it. But that's fine. Let this do its thing, and that'll give me time to get the cotton balls and get those painted up and textured and all that good stuff. So it's coming along. It's not the fastest process, but it's not something I'm working on straight through. I just do this in my spare time. You can do the same principle on the Lemax houses. You can make a custom light to fit in that hole, like I was showing with the one where I did it for the ice cream parlor, where I just soldered some RGB LEDs. And if you look at the comment on that video, there's a comment by a fellow YouTuber named Big Clive who tells you actually where to get those and how to find them on eBay. If you've never seen his stuff, you should probably watch his channel. And he does a lot of little electronics. He's one of the people that inspired me to start posting the videos of the stuff I do, besides everybody else that sees what I do in person. So Now this is where the fun comes in. I'm going to solder these wires to this, and I made them really short so I didn't have a lot of over coiling inside. Alright, since the glue hasn't set yet, I'm going to try and strip these. That's one. And two. Forgot these were my new ones and they're super sharp, so I ended up cutting off a couple of extra sections I didn't mean to. And because once I have the circuit board pushed inside, I'm going to put some weight on this to help hold it down. There we go. Tin the wires. Keep hearing weird sounds. It kind of sound like somebody passing gas. That's my leather belt rubbing on the back of the metal chair I'm sitting in. Put a little solder on here so I can solder up those two wires. Just cutting off the extra piece of that resistor, the extra leg, extra long leg. So now that they're connected, I'm going to pull this in from the bottom. This big hole in the bottom kind of helps for doing things like this, as well as when I fill it with hot glue, I can just do it from the bottom where the opening is. Just try and center that up a little. Like that. Make sure I got the loop out. That. Now I just need to find a plug and we can test it. Alright, just to show all you people out there don't know, it might be hard to see, it is 4.5 volts. So plugging it in, those should light up. We just got to work on the you can kind of see it. There you go. So now just need to work on the cotton balls. So I am going to set this off to the side with some weight to hold this down so it hardens in place. Once I center it back to where it's supposed to be, right there. And these have a weighted base, so I am going to use this to keep pressure on it. There we go. There we go. I'll push that off to the side. Alright, I'm going to clean up a little and get the stuff prepped to show you basically what I'm going to do with the cotton balls. So, got a little straightening up with a bench to do and get the materials needed to dye these. What I'm going to do is I'm going to dye them yellow, and then I'm going to add red highlights to the yellow, and then I'm going to add black on top of that. The yellow dyeing I'll show you in here on the workbench. The red and black touch-ups would have to be outside because that's actually going to be done with spray paint, and I don't particularly like having spray paint inside my house. It had a very distinctive odor. So anyhow, so I'll return with the setup for the second to final piece, which would be the balls. Then everything just has to be glued together, which is the final step. Gluing the balls together and gluing the disc of lights inside of the new cauldron. So, shall return. Okay, we're back. I got a cut down solo cup, a little bit of water in another cup, cotton balls of course. I have some Art Time tempera paint, which is, I don't know, shake well, use soap and water for cleanup, may cause stains. I don't know. It could be, trying to see what kind of paint it was, so I can tell you. It says yellow, but anyway. Stir stick and some paper towels. Let's just, get some paint in there. Add a little bit of water. Already stirred. Yeah, apparently I need to go back to stir school. Jeez. Oh yeah, you need gloves too, so you don't have yellow hands. Solo cup may not be the best thing because I keep catching the bottom, and that's why I keep splashing the yellow paint. But it's the only thing I had that's disposable. So take your cotton balls, get any crap out of it. Just a touch more water to make sure it saturates the inside of the cotton balls, because I'm going to be shredding the cotton balls once they're dry. Yeah, still making a mess. Yeah, it's fine. It's a workbench. So what I'm going to do with these cotton balls is dry them. There's a couple ways to dry them out. One is you can put them in your oven. I would not recommend a microwave. Put your oven on a couple 100 degrees, I would assume, and put them on a small baking tin or a piece of foil. rigid enough it doesn't fall through your slats. You can make a contraption where you stick them in a metal container with holes that you can then put like a blow dryer or heat gun in it. You can stick them out in the sun. You can let them dry naturally. It'll take about a day. I'm trying to do a stretch them. I wasn't trying to tear it, but that's okay. I'm just trying to open them up so I have more surface area coming out so that I can dry them easier. Because when you have balled up sections, the moisture gets trapped on the inside. There we go. Clean up a little. So I am going to go set these guys in the oven. I'll set my oven for about 200 degrees. Let it run for a couple minutes, probably like 5 or 10. Then I'm going to check the moisture. And then if the moisture is still there, do a finger test. I'll put it in for a couple more minutes. And I'll just keep repeating the process. So I'm just using this, pretty much any yellow paint that you can dissolve in water. If the paint is like a model paint, it probably won't dissolve in water, but you use paint thinner, and then at that point it would not stick it in your oven, especially if it's gas. I would dry them naturally, or using a heat gun or blow dryer from a distance, maybe a foot. Again, can hold them in some sort of contraption so they don't blow around, because as they dry they get super light again. But you can kind of see where it's going, hopefully. And when these are shredded and balled back up, it gives you the lumpier appeal. And then you hit them with some red and black highlights to give it that lava-like appearance. So it looks like the brimstone. So, alright, we'll return when these shredded up yellow cotton balls are dry. Alright, back. I put it in the oven at 200 degrees for about 20 minutes, 25 minutes. About 10 minutes in, I took the stuff out, fluffed it up, flipped it over, put it back in, made a little aluminum tray. What you want to do once you get it out is start fluffing it. I've already started in advance, so you don't have to wait, 15 minutes for me to do this. But especially where the paint's thicker, you want to make sure you try and separate a lot of that. Not all of it. Then you'll see why, hopefully on the camera, it'll show. But you start fluffing it, pulling it apart, making it look good. I already did these pieces here, and I put hot glue on the front to hold this down. I'm sure most of you know how to use a hot glue gun. I used tweezers, which have now hit the floor. The tweezers to hold down the circuit board. Let's get in a light. Like so. And, oh hey, apparently I broke my tweezers. Screw came loose. And then just glued around it so I didn't have to worry about burning my finger on the tip of the glue gun. I'm sure if anybody's ever done it, it's very painful. So, anyhow, I have not touched this up with the red or the black like I was telling them, but I wanted you to see what it kind of looks like. So, I'm going to shove this in here as best as I can. And then plug it in. And you got a nice little glow. Let's kill the lights. There we go. And with the exposed on the back side, it gives that illumination up the inside of the dragon, which again might be hard to see on the camera. But here's the point. it kind of looks like a bubbling, flaming cauldron with just the yellow to change the tone of the red, amplify the flicker yellow, and then you get a little bit of depth with the flicker orange. By using 3 of the colors, you can get more depth into it, where you can see hot spots and cold spots like you would if you had a cauldron full of brimstone or lava. So you get dark spots and light spots, and I really wish the camera was better to show this, because it looks pretty damn good, except it's only yellow. So when the lights are on, which are coming back now, you have this weird looking popcorn thing sticking out of the center. So that's why I'm going to dim it down a little on the top by touching this up with some red paint and some black spray paint. So spray a little, and then going to put another ring of glue in the inside, like I did here, and then stick the cotton ball in there, and then fluff the top. Now I did 3, but I'm only going to use 2. I think the 2 is plenty. 1, the lights aren't quite as deep as I wanted. They're about 1/8 of an inch higher than I would have liked. It's fine, I think it looks good anyway. That way it would have provided more light up the inside of the statue. But the thing is the more the light would be at the base behind the cauldron, and you wouldn't see it. So the higher up is fine. The higher up allows a little bit more light up the body. And then it helps with shadowing the head. So, personal preference. And because these are extremely low powered LEDs as far as their power draw, and that little resistor, which is, I'm going to turn this off so I can actually look at it because the lights are too bright. Here we go. Which is right here on the back side, kind of where under his head is if you were to go straight down. It's not going to get hot enough to ignite cotton balls. Now if you were running high powered LEDs or a very high amperage, basically running them at their max, and possibly running an undersized resistor, meaning this is an 1/8 watt resistor. If you ran, I don't think they make anything smaller, but if you ran a high intensity light with an 1/8 watt resistor, that resistor can get hot, and then you risk burning your cotton and melting your circuit board, potentially. If you're concerned about power, put a 1/4 watt or a 1/2 watt. The bigger the wattage of the resistor, the bigger the resistor. Then you may stick it on the bottom of the board. I still am going to put some glue down the center here, right in that hole. I'm just going to take the glue nozzle and squirt it in there, and then keep it upside down for a minute, just as a little added security. Make sure it doesn't pop up. So, and then we're going to put the bottom on. So, and I already showed you the bottom, but here's the bottom. And basically all I'm going to do for the bottom is trace it out. Got what's it called? Long-nosed pattern marker. If you watch Adam Savage, he uses these. They're expensive, but you know what? They work really good. Especially if you have to get down inside something, like a nut or an inside circle. This will fit in the hole, so you can mark it, which is really nice. You can get them on eBay, you can get them on Amazon. So, just trace around the front and the side. And also it's nice if you don't want to use the fine point, it's got a chisel point on the other end. So I'll mark this as the front. The only reason I want to do that is in case there's any irregularities in the base, as far as it's not perfectly cylindrical or circular. Yeah, there's like a lump right here where it goes in. So, and of course, I'm sure y'all know the rest. You just take a pair of scissors, cut it out. trim it, stick it on, and it has a new base. So anyhow, it is currently too cold outside to paint, which sounds very funny for living in Arizona, but it's in the 40s, and spray paint, it technically will stick to the cotton. I just don't feel like going out there and dealing with it. So I'll probably do it tomorrow when also it's daylight. It's also nighttime. But I wanted to give you an idea what it looked like before I did all the touch-up, so you have a basic idea. Cotton, gauze, you can turn that stuff into fire, smoke. There's people online that show you how to make like those floaty clouds that you can put up. So, anyhow, after it's painted, I'll be back to show you the finished product, and then the lamp will be done and ready to go off to its owner. Okay, a really long project later. It just seemed like a long time because I wasn't working on it straight through. I might take it out and do a little more touch up on it. I'll try and give you an idea. I'm thinking about making it a slightly darker, but here it is. Would be at night. You're getting the glow on it from the edges, but you're getting the dark and the lighter and the reds. I wish the camera was a better resolution for low light, because it actually looks pretty good. But unfortunately, this is the best I can do on the resolution at the moment. So, the Cauldron of Brimstone is pretty much done. So I might try and do a little bit more touch-up. I might not, because it looks pretty decent. You can really see the hot spots where you'd have like the cracks in the surface and the dark spots where it's cooler. Yeah, it actually looks really good in person. So here is the glowing lamp to replace the part that was broken or missing from an aromatherapy lamp. So this will go back to its owner. See how they like it with the Cauldron, or have to change it. But I think we're good. Looks good. Something I would put on my shelf and plug in the evenings, or leave on all the time, kind of like my clock is. The initial clock that, well, it's the initial one that caused this person to want something similar. So that clock sits on my shelf. It's on 24/7, except when we lose power, and it flickers orange and yellow and has solid red lights. Very similar to this. It has flicker orange and yellow with a solid red light, singular, and instead of the lights just being reflected up into the piece itself, they are covered, so they illuminate through. Gives it that bubbling brimstone appearance, with the other side of it being opaque to allow light to illuminate dimly, but still, the contours of the statue itself. So, hopefully it didn't bore you to the point where you didn't watch the whole thing. I'll try and get some other shots of this, different angles. Maybe it'll show it slightly better, have some dim light in the background, some still shots. We're going to go for that. That way you can get a basic idea what it looks like in clarity. Anyhow, thanks for watching. Until the next one, have a good one. So there's the red. Now we get the black. It's kind of hard to hold your cell phone and do this. But you're getting the point, I hope. And all the background noise, because again, outside. Have the can relatively far away to give it a kind of a dusting effect. And this holder is just a cardboard or paper Dixie cup, like I did with the plastic ones. So anyhow, now we're going to let this dry, and then we're going to stick it in the cauldron. See the final product.